It's that time of year again. It's a Hall of Fame season, and I am here in this video to update my top 10 list of players over the age of 30 but still active that are most likely to make the Hall of Fame. What is going on, everybody? Thanks for joining me on my channel, Brutus on Baseball. In what has become an annual thing for me, I am updating all of my top 10 lists for the Hall of Fame. This is the third year in a row that I've done it. You can go back and take a look at the previous videos if you'd like, but this is all about the active players in Major League Baseball that are over the age of 30 that I think are on the best path for a Hall of Fame career. And the reason why I do this is so I can keep in check my biases, guys that I like versus guys that actually have a chance for the Hall of Fame. Because my baseball card collecting style is to get Hall of Fame player rookie cards. And so if somebody is going to make the Hall of Fame, but I'm not a huge fan of his, I still have to make sure I'm not too biased against him. The first time around, I just made a top 10. The second time around, there were a lot of players graduating from that under 30 to over 30 age. So I kind of redid the top 10 because I needed to at that time. But things are a little bit different this year. There's a lot of players still on my list from last year, but there's also some guys graduating from 29 to 30 as well. And just to make it clear, I based the age off of what age they were primarily in 2024. If they just turned 30 recently, I still have them on the under 30 list that I'm going to be doing next week. So without further ado, let's talk about the top 10 from this year. First off, there are a couple guys that I'm not including on my list. I haven't included them on previous lists because they're so close to the end of their career and they're obvious locks for Hall of Fame. So I don't want to make the list top heavy with these guys that are obvious picks. That includes Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw, and Justin Verlander for this year. So you will not see them on this list, and the reason is because they are surefire going to be Hall of Famers. Now, before jumping into the 2024 list, let's look back at last year's list. You'll see Mike Trout, Mookie Betts at the top, both really young guys, but are almost locks for the Hall of Fame as it stands right now. They just need to continue playing for a couple more years. Then you had Freddie Freeman, Manny Machado, another really young guy, just turned 30 last year, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, Altuve, Garrett Cole, Bryce Harper, and Jose Ramirez. That rounded up my top 10 last year. And obviously, if somebody had a great year this year and is on this list, they're likely to stay on it or move up a couple spots. If they had a bad year in 2024, then they're likely to drop down a couple spots. There's nobody on this list that had a really great year, unless you maybe consider the guys at the bottom. Jose Ramirez had a really good year, and Bryce Harper did too. But everybody else in the middle to the top had decent years, but nothing that was top 5, 10 MVP worthy. And a number of these guys missed time with injuries. But there's a couple guys that didn't do very well. That's Paul Goldschmidt, had a pretty bad season, and Garrett Cole, who was on the shelf as well for a lot of the season with an injury. So their path is probably going to be impacted at least a little bit. Now, the other thing that I did last year is I put 3 guys kind of on their way down who had made my previous top 10 list, but they didn't anymore, and then 3 guys that I thought maybe were on their way up. On the way down, we had Giancarlo Stanton, Chris Sale, and Jacob deGrom. Out of those 3 guys, Chris Sale won the Cy Young Award in 2024 in the National League. So obviously he's going to get a really big bump, and we'll have to see if it's a big enough bump to make my top 10. Stanton had a great postseason, but not a great season. So even though he still has the potential to make the Hall of Fame, if he can keep playing, stay on the field, keep hitting home runs, which is the key for him, he's not likely to make my top 10. And deGrom had a great couple games at the end of the season, but again missed the majority of the year with an injury. So he's not going to make my top 10. The guys that were on the way up, you see Marcus Semien, who had another really good season, and Aaron Judge, who had a phenomenal season, probably the best season out of anybody in the major leagues this last year in 2024. But the issue with him is he doesn't have a lot of counting stats because he started so late in his career. So we have to ask the question here, is this 2024 season going to bump it up high enough in those standings? We'll have to see. And then Xander Bogaerts I put on the way up because he's one of those guys that graduated into his 30s last year, and he had a pretty good career up to that point, but 2024 was not a very kind season to him. And before we do jump into the top 10 list, let's look at the under 30 list from last year of all the guys that are graduating to this over 30 list this year. this is who I have to consider to see if they can bump anybody out of the top 10. We've got Francisco Lindor, who had a phenomenal season again in 2024, a second place MVP finish. Corey Seager, who had some injuries to deal with, but when he was on the field, he did pretty well. Trey Turner had a pretty decent season. Alex Bregman had another Alex Bregman-like season. And in my mind, he's actually one of the most underrated players. Look at his WAA and WAR numbers compared to Seager and Turner. He's actually pacing better than both of them, but he's not given nearly as much love as the other two. And I'm sure a big part of that is the Astros scandal, even though in 2017 he was a rookie and not a huge part of that team. And then the other guy that made my top 10 was Matt Olson. He barely snuck onto the top 10. He really doesn't quite have the numbers to be considered in the over 30, but these are the guys that are graduating and that I have to consider as well. So put all of that together, let's go through who I have in my top 10. I'm going to go through this quickly because there wasn't a lot of change in the whole top 5 this year. We still have Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Manny Machado, and Nolan Arenado in that order. Something I said last year is I wouldn't be surprised if Mookie Betts eventually has a better career than Mike Trout, simply because he can stay on the field longer. And again, we saw both of them have a little bit of injury trouble, but Mike Trout certainly more this year. But Mookie Betts made up some ground. He's starting to get closer to those WAA WAR numbers, as well as the traditional stats. And he's 2 years younger, so he has time to make up for it. Freddie Freeman had an okay year. It was really the postseason where he shined. And that is one of those things that the story of Freddie Freeman is much bigger now than it was last year. But overall, he's still on a great pace for a Hall of Fame career if he can just keep it up. At the same time, it wasn't enough to bump him ahead of Mookie Betts or Mike Trout in my mind, so he stays at number 3. Manny Machado, Nolan Arenado are two guys that have been compared a lot throughout the careers, and Manny Machado just has the better numbers. He's 2 years younger, he's ahead in hits, slightly ahead in home runs, ahead in OPS plus. They're fairly neck and neck in WAA and WAR, but again, Machado's 2 years younger, and Arenado is definitely showing some signs of slowing down. For that reason, I think Machado has the better path to the Hall of Fame and a better path to potentially getting 3,000 hits in his career. Arenado, of course, has all of those gold gloves, which do add up to a lot, but in my mind, Machado still, I have to rank him a little bit higher. Now, the number 6 guy is where we're going to see the first change in my rankings. Number 6, I've put Jose Altuve. He's moved up ahead of Paul Goldschmidt, which was kind of a tough choice for me given how late in his career Goldschmidt is. But Altuve is a couple years younger. He has one of the best chances of getting 3,000 hits, which if he does is a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame, no matter what his past history with the Astros is. He's got pretty good numbers for a second baseman in hits, home runs, stolen bases, WAA, and WAR. And all those accolades, 9-time All-Star, 3 batting titles, an MVP, 2 more top 5 MVP, 7 Silver Slugger awards, and 2 World Championships. Given his age is only 34 and he can still add on to that, and he showed 0 signs of slowing down in 2024, I had to put him up at least 1 spot on this list. And switching spots with him is Paul Goldschmidt at number 7 now. He's 36, but he definitely showed some signs of slowing down in 2024. He's still got great numbers, 37 WAA, 63 WAR, pretty much a shoo-in already to be considered strongly for the Hall of Fame, but we'll have to see how the next couple seasons play out, which a lot of that probably will have to do with where he ends up signing this offseason and how much playing time he gets, how long of a leash his team gives him. But he's got a lot of accolades, 7-time All-Star, an MVP, 3 more top 5 MVP awards, 4 Gold Gloves, and 5 Silver Sluggers, so quite a balanced player here. It was tough to move him down a spot, but I really felt like it was necessary, even with his WA and WAR numbers already in the territory of what's a Hall of Famer. Number 8 on my list is Bryce Harper. Another great season from Harper, but not only the numbers, he has the fame, the Phillies fanatic fans behind him. So that is why I put him still 1 spot ahead of Jose Ramirez, who I have in 9th place. 2 guys that have great careers. We'll have to see how they go over the next 3-4 seasons, but these guys are both on a great path. They would certainly rank higher if it wasn't for how many great players are ahead of them still. And the 10th guy on my list, I really had a hard time deciding on this one. You'll notice Garrett Cole has been jumped by both Bryce Harper and Jose Ramirez, so I considered him for my last spot here. But then I also had to consider Chris Sale, who is a little bit older than Cole, but has better overall numbers, and he came back huge in 2024 with finally his first Cy Young Award. He's placed in the top 5 of the Cy Young 6 times in his career and finally won his first one in 2024. Must have been a huge relief for him. Given how great he's been, I had to pick him over Cole for the 10th spot because his numbers are better and his most recent track record is also better. But then I had to put Chris Sale up against Francisco Lindor for which one I think should get that 10th spot. At the end of the day, you've got Chris Sale, who has a little bit more of a solidified path for the Hall of Fame, even though he's 5 years older, against Francisco Lindor, who may end up with a better career in the long run, but he just doesn't quite have the numbers. So which one do you pick? And in the end, I decided to go with Chris Sale in the 10th spot, with the caveat that Francisco Lindor is probably a close number 11, and Gerrit Cole is probably my number 12 guy. And a huge part of the reason why I picked Sale is because of how good he was at the age of 35. If you look at his numbers, 138 wins, almost 2,500 strikeouts, a 140 ERA plus over his career. Fantastic numbers. Could he get 200 wins? Possibly. It's kind of an outside shot, but if he has more seasons like this last one, who knows? 3,000 strikeouts, I'd say that's pretty solid. 60 plus WAR, probably at this point. So with all of that, he made my number 10 spot. And so the guys that I consider close again, but on the way down, would be the same ones as before. Giancarlo Stanton, Jacob deGrom, and then insert Gerrit Cole in that. Gerrit Cole still had a decent year when he did pitch in 2024, so it was hard to put him on this going down list, but technically he was at number 8 last year and now he's off the list, so he went down. But overall, I'm still pretty bullish on his career, and I think that he also has a pretty good shot if he can stay on the field and keep producing for the Yankees. And for those group of guys that were incredibly close but didn't make the top 10, I still have some of those same guys. Marcus Semien, another great season in 2024, but just not enough to propel him forward. But if he keeps doing it, who knows? I still got Aaron Judge on that so close list, and that is a tough choice for me. I had a hard time considering him above Chris Sale or Francisco Lindor because he just doesn't have the numbers yet. He's the only player on this entire list of over 30 players that still doesn't have 10 years of Major League service. At 32 years old, he's only played in 9 seasons. And this has been talked about a ton when considering Hall of Fame status for players. One of the biggest indicators is how early you're able to start your career. And with such a late start, Aaron Judge is going to have a hard time making up for it, even given how great his peak has been. If he can hang on, play 5 more seasons, even of pretty average to above average baseball, he's going to be a shoo-in, pretty much guarantee it. If he has just 2 or 3 more seasons at this level of productivity, 10 WAR seasons, he's going to be another easy shoo-in, even if that makes up his entire career. But where I couldn't put him in the top 10 yet is because he's had injuries in the past that have kept him off the field. And if he ends up experiencing one of those injuries and he's just not able to produce any more seasons like the one he just had, he's not likely to make the Hall of Fame. So I couldn't quite put him up there in the top 10 yet. But let's revisit it after next season to see what kind of year he has, and I can almost guarantee that he'll make it with another season just like this one. And as you can see, I didn't even have space to consider guys like Corey Seager, Trey Turner, Alex Bregman, Matt Olson. They are not even close to the top 10 for players that are over 30 because of how phenomenal some of these careers are that are in the top 10. And with how young some of these guys are, with Trout, Betts, Machado, they're not likely to exit the top 10 anytime soon. So it may be really difficult to find those newcomers on this list for at least a couple more years. And this is exactly the sort of thing that makes me pause a little bit if I'm going to go buy any more Trey Turner rookie cards or even Corey Seager rookie cards. If they're not that close to the top 10 in the over 30 category, maybe I should wait a couple more years to make sure they're going to get there before investing any more in their cards. If you have any questions or thoughts of your own, put those in the comments down below. I'd love to have a good conversation about this stuff. And stay tuned. I will be coming in the future weeks with my under 30 category. There's going to be a lot of shaking up that list because of how many players have graduated the last couple seasons. And then I will jump in eventually into the Baseball Writers Hall of Fame announcement coming up in January and my thoughts and rankings on all of those players, looking ahead the next 5 years of voting. I hope you're enjoying the baseball offseason. Until I see you next time, keep talking baseball, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you around.